Hey guys, welcome to Love, Life, and Politics, where I talk about love, life, and mostly politics. It has been a very, very, very long time. I think it's been since 2021, maybe 2022, since I've posted something. And I'm back. I don't know why I ever stopped. Starting to get a little bit of a following, starting to get some views, and just life. I think I have a personal problem of not staying consistent in things. So I'm going to make sure I start bringing that back. I know it's not 2025, but I'm trying to make some improvements. So long story short, I'm back. I hope everybody had a blessed and great Thanksgiving. Everybody made it home safe, enjoyed the food, hopefully spent some good time with the family. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today because I'm disappointed. I am very disappointed because I didn't get into any political spats with my family this year. And obviously, a lot of the people in my family are happy that didn't happen. But me and the ones that I tend to get into political debates with probably deep down were not satisfied with the fact that none of that happened. Not satisfied in the slightest. Especially since some of them were like, hey, listen, despite what happens during this election, we need to have a good Thanksgiving. And I'm going to assume because they are, how do you say? I would say far left. Because they're far left, that I'm sure that they were consuming media that would lead them to believe that this was probably in the bag, that there was a strong chance that their candidate was going to pull out and get the dub. So they were essentially giving that message to us, assuming that we were going to be the ones getting defensive. We were going to be the ones saying that, oh, this was rigged and all that stuff. But praise God, thank Jesus, thank the Lord, that was not the case. So I was really hoping and praying that maybe even a little bit of a civil discussion could have come this Thanksgiving. But no, that was not the case. Pretty much no politics came up at all. And I'm not going to say I was bored, but my happiness in terms of that particular aspect that tends to come with Thanksgiving wasn't fulfilled. So today, I'm going to talk about what my perfect conversation and scenario, what was going through my head in terms of what I wanted to say, what I wanted to get off my chest, how I thought the conversation was going to go in a purely hypothetical situation. So this is what I wanted to happen. I wanted just Thanksgiving to start normal, just a great day, food, everybody gets in there. Very late, per usual. Like, who's ever actually on time? And, we just start enjoying each other's company, making fun of one another. Because I got a brother-in-law that's in town that just stays talking trash at all times. He's honestly the most gifted trash talker I've ever met in my life. And if I ever become, bigger and then, my name comes out and then, sometimes families get involved, I would love for the world to meet this individual. It is insane. Anyways, that was going to happen. And then, we start eating. And then, the people that, the older crowd or the super young crowd starts kind of feeding out, moving out. And then us, the small group, handful, that's what I was looking for. The handful of us who just, like to talk that trash a little bit, like to get into theological and political and spiritual, just all those types, because we do not agree on all things, as you can expect. But those type of conversations to happen. And I'd be sitting there at the table. They'd be sitting across from me. There's two of them that prescribe to the left ideology. One of them, I'm unsure how left, but both of them definitely Kamala voters. And there's no other way to put it. Kamala voters. And I was just waiting to sit there and just be like, just let them get it off their chest and be like, I can't believe this, I can't believe that, and blah, blah, blah. And for me to just be calm, cool, and collective, and then be like, you know what? I want 5 minutes. I want 5 minutes to ask you a string of questions just to see where you're at and to kind of gauge why and how we got to this point. And then obviously this is the real hype. This was the fantasy part of it. And then be like, Fine. The floor is yours. You've got 5 minutes. Go ahead and be like, all right, cool. First question I would have asked him, obviously, was how confident were you that your candidate was going to win? And in this hypothetical situation, because I do believe they live in a very strong, insulated, worldview, like just all of their media probably is really pushing one thing. And obviously with algorithms feeding you what you already like to keep you on the platform, obviously would be just overwhelmingly the thing that they believe. Okay. So was that a feedback loop, positive feedback? I'm trying to think of the word. Something bias. It'll come to me eventually. Anyways, so I was expecting him to be, reading the news and consuming and believing the fact that, all the polls were showing that she was up. She had just a strength as soon as she was, I would say, what's the proper word to say that? As soon as she was forced in, not elected, which is a pretty big situation, but I probably wouldn't hit on that right off rip. I would say that's kind of sort of what I would start. Like, how do you think the election was going to play out? And I would just let them. Obviously, this has been a little bit. You see, I'm a little flustered. I wouldn't even say flustered, but my technique is kind of off. So yeah, bear with me. How do you think the election would have ended up, or were you surprised with how the election played out? And I would hopefully allow them to answer that question, and they would say, "No, we thought we were going to win. Like, we're actually very surprised by the outcome." I would believe would be the honest answer if I was to ask that question. Obviously, people may change their answers once, the results come out. They obviously want to appear like they were not completely wrong. Maybe they'd say, "Hey, I thought it was up and the arrow was closer." I doubt it. From the conversations that we've had and just the way that their thought processes goes and the answers and way of thinking, I doubt that that's the type. More middle of a line information hubs is where they were going. I think it was probably more left. So I was going to assume they said, "No, we thought we were winning." And I would ask them follow-up question, "Why were you so wrong?" And wait for them to answer. I mean, obviously somebody asked a question like that, I don't necessarily know how they would respond, but I would pose this as a reason why you are so wrong. Because your sources are either lying to you or extremely ignorant to the reality of the world. So that's why you believed and why you were so confident that your person was going to win. And I would let that sink in a little bit. They'd probably come back and forth, but ultimately I would let them kind of sit in that and then shift and follow up with that statement. Essentially, keep in mind, that's how wrong they were about this election. The polls were way off to the point that you thought you had a chance. So what does that say about where you consume most of the things you believe in if they're so wrong on something like this? Are you going to reconsider believing the sources that you currently watch that led you to believe that she had it in the bag? Or are you going to be like, "Oh, wow, maybe I should step back and reassess the type of information I get"? And then also tell them, maybe your worldview might be similar to the way you thought of this election going out. Maybe the things that you believe from these clearly false, not informative, fake news, misinformation, disinformation, to use the words they like to use, outlets, sources, may be leading you to believe things that you very vehemently argue for in other areas. And just let that sit in, let that sink in. I honestly don't think that would ever really lead to anything. So that would be the constructive part of it. And then I'd be like, okay, let's get off of that. My second question would be, why do you think you lost? And this is what I would consider, this is the more gloating part, but also maybe could be considered more constructive depending on how I delivered it, how their sentiment is, how they're talking to me, and how I'm responding. Obviously, I would essentially, I would ask them, why do you think you lost? And my understanding of what they believe, how previous conversations about these topics have come up, that they would essentially say it's because of bigotry. The country was not just ready for a black woman president. So sexism and racism, also xenophobia, transphobia, just all the typical things that individuals like this who prescribe to that identity politics side of politics would say. And then I would say, okay, cool. And that right there is why you're going to lose in 2028. And then they'd be like, what? And I would say, okay, cool. Let's just let me give you my perspective on why your candidate lost. And I would just lay it out. And this is how I would lay it out from my understanding of the situation, from the sources I've looked at, from the news sources that I've paid attention to, some of the things that I've read. Let me give you a plausible reason why she lost that doesn't fall into those ridiculous things that you said that completely remove actual discussion about failure of your party. Anyways, I would say, number one, she was not elected. Joe Biden had all the millions of votes that he got in his primary. And what your party did was a coup that essentially removed who was elected to be the top of your ticket. And you said, I don't care what the voters say, even though we're the Democratic Party. We're going to say, no, Joe, deuces. We're not going to have an open primary. And we're just going to install who we think it should be. Kamala Harris got no votes. And obviously they'd be like, no, but she was part of the ticket. No, sweetheart. And I'm going to say this. And if they ever hit you with this is how you respond. The top of the ticket is elected. The second is selected by the top of the ticket. Trump picked J.D. Vance. We did not pick J.D. Vance. And if Biden wanted to, and he was sane enough, at any point in time, he could have said, all right, for this before the convention, say my VP for my second term is not going to be Kamala Harris. He could have done that because he's the one that is elected and he gets to be the one to pick who his running mate is. Trump went through the entire primaries and absolutely cooked. He cooked. And then he selected J.D. Vance, which just on the side, didn't know much about him. But after watching interviews, the dude absolutely, I like him. He's like a more reserved, calm, articulate Trump. And I think that was a great pick. Anyways, I would say that. And obviously, maybe you might go back and forth on that, but I'd be like, that's my first point. Okay? Second point, you guys essentially put yourself into a very bad situation. Back when Trump was running in 2016, you called him the villain for wanting to build a wall and keep illegals out. That's what Trump ran on, and you called him a racist. You called him xenophobic. You called him all these words and painted him as a villain for wanting to close the border and keep Americans safe by keeping those who should not be in here from coming in here, right? So you villainize this man for years, half a decade, some would say. And then now, due to your people that you voted in, asterisks on that, people that you voted in essentially reversing all of the good policies that he had that at least helped stem a lot of that problem, and also just having a strong stance on it so that the rest of the world know, don't even try, homie. It's not going to work for you. Removed all things that worked, and then we had some of the worst years of border crossings and people coming into our country illegally ever. And then that became one of the top 2 issues of the country. So the thing that you villainize this man for, his point of view on it, is now the point of view that people desperately want because, and I'm going to give credit, Abbott and DeSantis allowing other parts of the country to feel what conservative states have been feeling due to these bad policies. Because it's very easy. This is an aside. It's very easy for these rich elites to essentially say, yeah, open the borders when they're so far away from the borders and they're not dealing with the immediate effects or the direct effects of those bad policies. So when the governors ended up shipping these things to those liberal cities that didn't get to deal with the front, they're like, oh my goodness, this is what it's like whenever we have open border policies. And this really sucks. This is an extreme strain on our system. Crime is ridiculous. Housing these individuals is insane. And also the fact that the liberal governments or liberal states were using money that should have been used for citizens on these people that came from other places just showed instantly. You could see it. It showed where their real values were and who they really valued when it comes to this matter. So I think that's a big one. Obviously, I would say, hey, also, the economy was absolute doo-doo caca. It doesn't matter how you wanted to cut those numbers. Inflation, ain't no arguing that. Worst inflation we've seen in ages. And they try to be like, yeah, actually, inflation has gone down now. No, sweetheart. The effects of the inflation stay there. It's not negative. You could say that it's doing better when there's negative inflation, but just the increase of it slowed down. You do not get to use that as, yeah, we're doing great now. All right. What about the last 3 years? That's just because things are doing decent, or it's not getting significantly worse at the rate that it was before towards the end, does not mean that all of a sudden you get to say you're doing great. And then, since they knew this election was coming up, they started pushing the policies that Trump had, and it started, kind of alleviating the problems with immigration. It's just insane. And people also saw that and just saw that you could have done that the entire time, but you didn't. So I would essentially use those two things as one of the things I would say, hey, sorry, these are very valid arguments as to why people would not want to elect your individual. Horrible on the policies that people really care about right now, as well as her just not being elected and people not getting to choose her. Nobody chose her, period. And then I would also add, and this would just be me rubbing it in a little bit, I'd be able to say, hey, another very valid reason is you guys broke 200 years of precedence to go after an ex-president. You understand that? It doesn't matter how you feel about it. If you think that those crimes were seriously committed, the fact that you broke 200 years of precedence because you hated this man so much, and the people saw this, you broke it essentially 6 times over. An ex-president went from never being prosecuted to being prosecuted in 6 different avenues in 1 year. You just cannot hide that. You can't make that look anything different from political prosecution. Like or political malpractice. That's what I would say. And you targeting an individual because you hate him so much using lawfare. That's the word I'm looking for. And they would just have to eat that. Obviously, they'd put some pushback on that, and they'd be like, all right. And my final thing I want to say is just the fact, whether you believe what the conservatives believe or not, is just the fact that we haven't had a president almost die like that. And for him to essentially have a bullet graze his ear, come that close to killing him on live television, and him get up and go and fight like that. And y'all still tried to, oh my gosh, the response. I wouldn't go into that. Say, you tried to kill him twice. Obviously, it's being a little much by saying you tried to kill him twice. But I would say you can't argue with the conservative who says this was deliberate, because you can't mess up that bad so quickly so that everyone, like, the president literally should have died in Pennsylvania. Without a doubt, President Trump should have died. But, and I'm going to say it now, and I'm feeling confident, by the grace of God, who had a much better plan for this man, he didn't die. So I'd be able to sit there, okay, and this is my perfect scenario, just to express all these things the way I express, and hopefully get some pushback, and then me be able to be like, you're wrong on that. you're wrong on this. Or if I'm being a better debater and not, getting heated, I'd be like, all right, hypothetically, let's think of this particular situation. I feel like that's the conversation I would have loved to have this Thanksgiving. Obviously, while I'm talking to you guys, putting a lot more filler in, I'm saying probably more than I would be able to say if I was sitting across from them. Obviously, they'd be able to push back on some of those things and I'd be able to rebut. But that's the conversation I wanted to have this Thanksgiving. But I didn't. So, because I now have this little platform that, doesn't really do too much because, I've been gone for so long. You guys got to peep into my brain on what I wanted to have happen this Thanksgiving. So, that's pretty much it. I'm glad to be back. My setup makes it easier for me to post stuff, so I'll be able to pretty much come in here and either rant or talk about particular situations. I'm probably going to maybe do a little not doing politics literally every time, but yeah, try to get like a once a week thing going on so I can, do something. I think the wife is calling me over here. So I appreciate you guys staying for this long. 20 minutes. If you guys stayed to the end, you guys are troopers. I really do appreciate you. I hope you guys have a blessed Christmas. I'll probably post again before Christmas. I'm trying to be more consistent in these things. And I appreciate you. Y'all have a blessed one. Stay safe. Peace.